CSS containers, making websites accessible to disabled users. Some more information on this can be found on my website, johnrhudson.me.uk/computing. My personal background is that I learnt about page design as a student journalist. When I encountered microcomputers, I first used them to save time, but when I encountered vector graphics, I realized that you could use them for quality output. In the 1990s, I found that I could support a blind student through my use of a computer. The wider context is that cascading style sheets were first proposed in 1994 and adopted by Microsoft, Netscape and Opera, but they fell out of favour in the first decade of this century before being readopted as part of the redevelopment of HTML in 2011. This redevelopment was proposed by Mozilla, Apple and Opera, who surveyed the ways in which websites were being designed and concluded that 5 elements were most likely to appear in a website page: a header, a footer, navigation links, links to tangential content, and the main content of the web page. David Fisher presented these 5 elements, known as the semantic elements, schematically at a meeting of the Bradford Linux Users Group in 2010, when he described the work which Mozilla, Apple and Opera had been doing. From a user's point of view, as screens had become more oblong rather than square, putting the navigation links and the links to tangential material on either side of the main content reduced the distance the user's eyes had to jump back to the next line of the main content. From a developer's point of view, the HTML code became more readable and easier to maintain. In 2008, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines had been published, and work had begun on the Y-ARIA attributes, which were formally adopted by W3C in 2014. As part of the redevelopment of HTML, some HTML tags had their functions redefined in ways which reduced their ambiguity for screen readers. For example, the iElements lang tag attribute could alert the screen reader to a change of language. However, browsers still placed elements on the page in the order in which they appeared in the HTML code, so a screen reader normally had to go through all the navigation links on each page before reaching the main content. Some developers adopted the workaround of adding a link in the HTML code before the navigation links, which allowed a screen reader user to jump to the main content. By setting the line height of this link to 1 pixel, it is invisible to sighted users, but readable by screen readers. If you view catherinefletcher.info in a browser, you will see no mention of the link skip to content at the top of the web page, but a screen reader presented to the user. I have found that very few websites use this workaround, and in about half of them it does not work, presumably because the website has been updated since it was first added, and no one knew to update the link at the same time. One problem with the recommendations for the placement of the semantic elements was that there was no way in 2011 of anchoring them in place on the web page, and screen readers still presented the navigation links before the main content. Then the HTML main tag appeared, rather mysteriously, to be followed by CSS containers. These come in 2 flavors, Flex and Grid. As the CSS documentation revealed, the new main element was created to hold a CSS Flex container, which anchored the navigation links, the main content, and the links to tangential material, or the aside, on the web page. Within the Flex container, the HTML code to be set out in an order which favoured screen reader users, while in the CSS file, the order property could be used to make the material appear in a browser in an order suited to sighted users. The complete CSS file for the heathowboys.org.uk website demonstrates the use of the semantic elements and both a Flex and a Grid container in the lines beginning main to section. The first line, main, open brace, display, flex, close brace, declares that the main holds a flex container. The next three lines declare that when the article, nav and aside elements are children of the main element, they should have these particular properties. In particular, they should appear in the order nav, article and aside in a browser, even though they do not appear in that order in the HTML code. We can see the result of this in what a screen reader user hears. Perhaps a few too many welcomes at the start of this page, but otherwise straight into the main content on the page with no navigation links to step through. The body of the HTML code starts with the header, followed by the main element, including holding the CSS Flex container, in which the article element containing the main content of the page appears first. Near the start of the article is the school crest, which has the ARIA attribute role equals presentation. This tells screen readers that the image is not referenced in the main content, but is merely there for decoration. A sighted user, however, sees a web page in which the navigation bar is on the left of the main content, the crest is there as decoration, and the list of recent additions appears in the aside bar to the right. For this particular page, the aside bar follows the article in the HTML code, so that once visually impaired users have heard the main content, they can hear about the most recent additions to the website before hearing the navigation links. On other pages, the navigation bar follows the main content in the HTML code. Though intended for the benefit of sighted users rather than visually impaired users, a grid container is used to create columns where previously there had been a long list of links, for example on the obituaries page of the website. The line beginning section in the CSS file declares a grid container. Grid template columns auto says that the grid will consist of 2 columns and that these columns will be sized automatically. Justify content space around says that the columns will be spaced evenly with a half space at each end. As with flex containers, screen readers simply read the content of the grid container in the order in which it appears in the HTML code. So a screen reader user hears the first column followed by the second column, whereas a sighted user can immediately see in which column to search for a particular obituary without having to scroll as far as they would if it were a single list. To summarize, the flex containers change the dimensions of elements automatically in one direction, horizontal or vertical, to suit a device and its orientation. Grid containers allow items of different widths and heights to be placed asymmetrically and to change their placement depending on the dimensions and orientation of the screen. Though in the example given, none of these extended features were used. Of course, you do not have to use CSS containers in the particular ways in which I have done, but they do offer a great deal more flexibility in the design of web pages, so that the same web page can be equally accessible to sighted and to visually impaired users. Used with HTML elements like time, which offers a machine-readable time and date stamp for screen readers, and with the I element and the lang attribute, which alerts a screen reader to a change of language, and with the new CSS voice properties, which allow you to specify the gender, age, speed, and so on of the voice which the screen reader uses, the experience of a visually impaired user can be greatly enhanced. If you have any questions, my email address is in almost every PDF on johnrhudson.me.uk. Thank you for listening.